So this is the Statisticians chat, table talk. We're statisticians and we're also called scorers, depending on what level you're at and what statistics and analysis you want to get out of a softball game and the softball data. I'm Rowena Whittle and I come from Cumberland Nepean Softball Association, and I've always been with Cumberland right through from when I was playing through to all my scoring. And on my left I have Peter Wakefield.
Yep, so I'm Peter. I've been with Southern Districts my whole life. Playing, scoring, coaching.
And on my right I have Lynn Townsend.
Pretty much like Peter, I've been with North Shore though for my whole career. Life member of North Shore because I started as a little 7-year-old and I'm ancient now, so I've been through the gamut of player, coach, scorer or umpire. When I stopped playing I needed something softball to do because I couldn't not have softball in my life, so I took up scoring and followed the pathways that were available.
And we're quite an experienced table talk here, so we're just going to have a little chat about what we could say what we've been doing in the off season, but it's more like what have we been doing with our life, because in the off season most of my life has been I've been lucky enough to do a lot of softball outside the diamonds, looking at games and scoring games, and
I was going to say what off
looking
season.
at pre-score
Like,
games. Yeah.
What off season?
Yes.
Like
what off season.
COVID's actually introduced it off season. Like before that,
Yeah.
12 months of the year was softball.
Yes.
There was never an off season because you go out of summer comp into winter comp, or for Lenny winter comp into.
You've got the state championship games, and then you've got nationals and tournaments that are happening. So it never seems to be a month off without.
But that's
some
what
sort
makes
of
softball so good, that
Yeah.
you can segue from one season into the other.
Yeah.
That's why I like being a scorer, because I get to see a lot of good softball as well as people who are just starting softball and starting to learn the rules of the game and starting to enjoy it, and then you can see them develop.
Absolutely, and it is a perfect way to learn the rules because you're having to watch absolutely every single element of the game,
Yeah.
from the first pitch to the hit to the fielding, the whole work. So you've got to understand the rules eventually. They come to you because you're watching that rule being applied as a scorer, and you've got to notate it. When you get up to the higher levels, you're notating at a higher level. So, it's a great way to actually learn the rules.
And it's a good way to be involved with the team, because it's not just the coaches that you're involved with the players. They want to know, what did you score me? Was that an error or
was it an
yeah, is that a red or a green?
One of the worst things that we ever introduced was too hot to handle. Because
Yeah,
now when players making errors, no, that was too hot to handle. Dude, it was the throw-in error.
Yep. Yep. The higher you go, the more chance it's going to be an error.
Yeah.
I was told once that there were no errors in T-ball,
Oh yes.
but that's the only one that you're not allowed to
Oh, mate, if I score T-ball, the colours go out the window
Yeah.
and everything's just a hit and a dash. Like, I literally regress back to level 1 when I score T-ball.
I figure if you can score T-ball, you can score any age group because that is just so full on. But it's just the most exciting game to watch with the little kiddies and their reactions to what they do. They're gorgeous. And some of the girls I'm scoring for now at state level, and even my association top level, I was scoring with them in T-ball. And so that's as you were saying, that interaction with the players and that relationship you get with them. It's just wonderful to see them growing through their sport as well, and see their progression and their improvement. And some getting to become Olympians, which we've just had. But you actually
You work
saw
within
all
the
the
team,
way
yeah.
through. Yeah,
You're kind of being on that journey with them,
Yeah.
and then you kind of sit there and go, oh yeah.
And so you're not separate. You are definitely part of that team and an integral part of that team, not just for the coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, the kids really appreciate you. The players really appreciate you. So it's a lovely experience to be part of if you can't be a player or a coach.
And we're lucky enough to have a lot of experience, as I said before, but people will come and ask you and talk to you about something that happened. How would you have scored this? So that means you're involved with other teams and other people. So the scoring network in New South Wales is really wide, but it's really close.
It is. It's a great
we seem to
mentoring
get on.
environment.
Yeah.
All the higher level scorers are always open to be able to explain things to their own association scorers that are just learning how to do it. You know, the mums that have come along with their new T-ballers and have been given the book and the pencil.
And I think that's the way most scorers get involved, right? Is that they show up and on a Saturday and they don't have a scorer for the team, so you're closest, here you go. And and a lot of scorers have to fumble through that. So it's always good to be able to do that and have some sort of mentoring program or some sort of initiatives there.
They're always worried when they start that I'm going to miss a run, but once you get in front of or with a book and in front of it, you concentrate, and it doesn't matter if you're at level 1 how they get around the diamond.
Right.
It's just are they getting around, and when's the run scored? Just colour it in.
That's what I'd say to them too. Is the only important thing is just making sure you've got coloured the runs. If all of a sudden they've got home and you don't know how they got there, you don't have to worry. Just colour in that run because at the end of the day, how many runs they've scored is the only important thing for that level. And then, as we say, the levels progress from there up, and you get more involved in more aspects of scoring the game. But you don't have to have all of that to start.
Yes.
Which is the beauty of scoring. You can just draw lines and colour dots. And they only have to be a pencil.
Exactly right.
Yes.
It's actually funny because I had some coaches do the scoring levels during COVID, and they've actually said to me, "Oh, we now have a very different appreciation for scorers. Like we just did not realise how much work you guys do." So I think there's a lot of misconception. People just see you sit there and colouring in, and that's what my nephew used to say to me. He's like, "Oh, Auntie Peter, are you going to colour in now?" When anytime I'd go scoring, like when he was younger, and he'd come to softball, "Oh, Auntie Peter's colouring in."
Colouring in,
And that's perception, but after people start doing the courses, start learning, it's like there's a whole new world.
Yeah. Oh, my son's an umpire, and he always used, we'd both be at the same tournament, and we'd go home and he'd be complaining, or we'd be driving home, he'd say how tired he was, and I'd say, yeah, I'm exhausted too. So you've been sitting around doing that, nothing all day, and I said, excuse me, and then he started to learn how to score as well, and he's now a level 2 scorer, so he then turned around and he said, yeah, it is a lot harder than I thought it was. It's more mental.
Yeah. Well, you've got to be alert. Like, you have to be alert for every pitch.
Yeah.
And yet that's not something that may discourage people from starting it, but once you're in the game you don't realise that you're there for that long and you've got to watch every pitch, but you're part of the game.
Yeah.
I've actually scored other sports as well, so I've scored netball and I've scored a couple of other sports, and I actually find that it's more difficult to score them than it is to score softball, because in a netball game the ball can go up and down the court 4 or 5 times and you're doing nothing, and it's like, oh, no. But in softball, because you've got to score every pitch, you don't lose track of what's going on.
Yeah, you don't have the time to. You're not going to float off and think about something else because you can't afford to, because the next pitcher's coming in. T-ball's T-ball's the worst because you don't even have a pitcher.
Yeah.
All it is the little one gets up, bats the ball, off they go, next one's up batting the ball, so you eyes on that game the whole time. And with the pitching, and as you go up, you're looking at what sort of pitches they're pitching, and so it gets more and more complex the more you go
I didn't
up.
have that. I had an advantage when I came from softball because I used to play cricket and score cricket, so that's another game you have to watch every pitch. And you look at directions where hits are, etc., which is the same as softball. You're looking at where people are hitting them and where the pitch is.
But it certainly also, I think, gives you much better idea of where the coaches are and what their thinking is, and watching their thoughts on what they should be doing with the situation they're in. And you can actually sometimes be thinking the same line or ahead of them, she's going to do this next, or he's going to pull this next.
Or don't do that because this player doesn't do that.
Right. Yeah. It's not just scoring the game for a scorer's point of view, you're looking at from the coaching point of view as well. And
I actually have a coach that I score for regularly at rep level for some of the districts, and he's always said that I'm an extra coach. Like I'm an extra coach and part of his coaching staff because he can say, I can see that kid's doing something wrong, but I'm not sure. Peter, what's your thought on that? And I can say, oh, well, I think he's doing this. And it's like, that's it. Because I'm watching it so much, he's watching the whole field, having to watch everything where I'm watching that play.
Yes.
So
you're watching him in the batter's box and each pitch he's facing and how he's reacting to each pitch, whereas the coach is not necessarily looking at that minutiae of the whole situation.
Exactly, because they've got, that batter in the batter's box plus runner
they've
on
got
second.
runners and they've got, the score's this, so I've got to be trying this.
A lot of coaches, that I know that I've worked with, they will come and say, oh, I can see that there's something wrong, I just can't pinpoint it. And so, that's also another thing because we are focusing so closely on everything.
Yeah, that's the word. The big thing about scoring is the focusing on every aspect of the game, every minute of the game. You can't, except when they're changing, the field or whatever. But you're catching up on statistics and stuff like that. You use those few minutes to catch up on the stuff you haven't been able to do.
And when you're talking about the speed, when I first started being female, I was brought up and always used to score with female teams. So coming to watch my first male game and having to score it, I just found the game was so different. You had to concentrate so much harder, but you also had to spark a lot more excitement. It's a different type of excitement.
It is. It's
so
just,
watching males
mostly,
and females, it's still a great game.
I grew up scoring predominantly male, and Mum, I grew up, so I started scoring so I could stay to watch the men's games, because the men's games, when I was younger, they were so dynamic on a normal Saturday. And so, Dad always liked us to go home after our games, and it's like, well, how can I stay, and then so I started scoring, and Mum teach me, so I learnt scoring on men's games. And it's just, you're right, it is so much more dynamic, and that just comes down to the physicality and the agility of male versus female, and not to say anything else, but it's just a different type of game.
Yes.
I played for a female-only association, so that's all I knew until I started coming out to Blacktown to, assist score and sort of learn my way through the sort of higher levels of the pathway, and got put on men's games. And like Rowena, the first games was, hey, he was on first when I put my head down. Now he's on third. How did he get there? Men just do those sort of things, and eventually you sort of learn you can't take your eyes off them, and as you say, they're just so much more dynamic. They're testosterone that's just let loose when they're playing.
And risk-taking.
Yes. You think, okay, the play's over because they've got to first, and all of a sudden they see a tiny little inch of I can get to second here. I'm going.
Because I caught the ball and I've just fumbled it. I'm picking it up, but hey, that runner's running to third now.
Just take it. And
So
now I can come to appreciate their type of game, which is totally different to the female game, and I enjoy it immensely. And for the first time ever, I'm actually going to be a state team male a scorer. Yeah, and I've never been, any that I have done have been females, and I'm absolutely rapt and looking forward to doing the blokes.
Yeah.
Because it's a very exciting game.
Yeah. Well, state league competition here at Blacktown gave me the opportunity to continually score for men's teams. But I've always scored reps and states and international female teams.
Female teams, and it is. And I never knew that it was so different.
Yeah.
And that the men could be exciting.
I think it's definitely more of a jump to go from women to men than it is to go from men to women.
Yeah, a lot of people say that if they do that, men to women, that women are boring.
I have found, I sit there and I have a look at sometimes, and it's nothing against the women's game or anything, but because I score,
in a
absolutely,
but because I score so many men's games, I'll look at a play and go, my second base would have taken that catch, but that's just because men's range is bigger.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean.
They don't mind throwing themselves in the dirt.
I do find that the women's games are a little bit slower than the men's game. There's just not as much.
I think there's more finesse in the women's game.
Definitely.
It's more finessed. It's not as aggressive as such as the men's. It's still aggressive, but it's more finesse, and You know, their pitching style is more focused on the movement of the ball rather than the speed and the, you know, in-your-face pitches. So
Yes, you can still watch, like thinking back to the Olympics, you can still watch the likes of Monica Abbott from the US or Wayno from Japan.
yeah.
And I could sit and watch them all day because
Absolutely.
they're
What
just
they're
fantastic
doing.
pictures. But it doesn't take anything from the male
Mm.
legends
No,
that
it's just different.
we have
So
from here in Australia as well.
you don't have to be committed to one
No.
or the other. You can, you know, interchange both of them and get satisfaction as a scorer from either the men or the women and appreciate the abilities of the teams and the coaching staff
Yeah.
on both sides of the game.
Yeah.
And they're both, you know, fantastic sports to be part of.
Yeah, and just going back to COVID, sometimes during COVID when I had opportunities, I would watch some of the games that had been YouTubed or recorded, and then I would practice my scoring on that. And I ran a couple of iScore, because iScore's becoming the thing to use in technology. I ran a couple of iScore courses during COVID to keep the scorers and statisticians with their hands in, but also to try and teach them that there's another aspect, there's a technology aspect of scoring as well as the paper. I still think paper is the first option that anyone should have. Technology can let you down, but there's the output you get from the technology is only good as the input that you put into it. So you've got to know your game and know what the technology can do for it. But I was going to ask Peter, I ran the iScore during COVID. I hear you ran a couple of level 1, level 2s.
Yes, I ran some online level 1s back in August, and that was really good, like to get more new scorers on. So we had a range of people that come to those, people that have been scoring for a while, just wanted to sort of start their journey into the pathway of making it official. Some people that had never scored, they were coaches, but they wanted to get an understanding, a better understanding of how the scoring happened. You know, mums and dads, people that are just associated with the sport and wanted to keep going. So it was really good, and I found that the level 2s were a little bit more challenging because I like to be really interactive in my level 2 sessions.
Yeah, and if you're
and
doing
you
it on
kind
Zoom
of
and you
lose that
yeah.
little bit of interaction with the level 2s, but yeah, we had like from southern districts and Campbelltown and Macarthur, we had quite a good turnout across the sessions. So it's really good to see, and I think we need to promote scoring a little bit more, because I think a lot of the time scorers are only getting promoted into it or thrusted into it by being a parent on the sideline.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, you know, it's good to see that we're getting some more and more interest, especially around our area. I know, like southern districts, we struggle for scorers at the rep levels, and that we've got 3 potentially that can score 16s and over. So, you know, it's a lot of work on a lot of us. So, you know, it's good to see that we're getting a lot more interest in. I've got a little crew of some of the younger kids. So I've got a 12-year-old who's just done his level 1. He's been scoring for 3 years.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot more interest from the younger kids. So even the younger rep players, they
Yeah.
want to come, and they whiz through that level 1. They're just so on
There's
to
a big
it.
jump from level 1 to level 2, and
Massive.
that's why the interaction that you can have with the people doing your level 2 course is better than doing it on a Zoom, because often
Some
it's
things
that
need a
one
little
to
bit
one.
more explanation, and okay, we need to flesh this out a bit more.
I-
This group needs it more.
I look at the whole way through everything that we've done, so level 1 to level 5, and I look at all of that and I go, the biggest jump in scoring is level 1 to level 2. Like there is so much, because you're introducing colour, you're introducing how people are getting around bases, you're just introducing a lot at that level 2 stage. So for me, that's the biggest jump, and we had quite a few, some of the attendees that were in our level 1, they then did the level 2. You know, and they're like, wow, it is a big jump.
They have to have a bit of experience though from a level 1 to do the level 2.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, some of them hadn't
Yeah.
scored very much, so
No.
you need to have a bit of experience.
You need to have a bit of
You
experience to start to
Do a
start
lot more
there.
games behind it before you and see more game scenarios, game situations, and understand gameplay and that before they can take that to a level 2, because
And some
that's
of the
what you're
terms that you
recording.
come up
Yes.
with in level 2, such as the difference between an error and a wild throw, if you haven't seen it, then if you're talking about it, somebody's just got in their head the idea and they're going to get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
It's like the base on balls or the intentional base on balls.
Because it's not. the
Some of
instructions
those
that
things
as well.
don't come up every weekend.
Yeah.
So you may have to
Well, I
wait
mean,
quite a few
intentional
weeks
base on
before
balls,
it's
like,
they're not
I don't know that I've ever
that.
seen that at club softball,
it's
right?
not
Like
normally the rule.
it's not normally there at club softball.
Yeah.
You get to reps and then you kind of get a bit, oh, what's that?
And that, you see, that's the one thing I always used to tell my level 2s especially, when I was doing a course, was, look, you've done the course, you're going to go out there and score at your club level and whatever, but there's a lot of this you're not going to necessarily see. If you want to really get some experience, when there's tournaments on at Blacktown quite often, back in the days before COVID, we used to have assistant scorers, and Kay was our director of scoring, would be quite happy for these level 2s to come and sit, and that's how I progressed through, was come and did a lot of assist scoring here at Blacktown with the more experienced scorers beside you, and seeing those situations that aren't going to occur at your own association games.
Or if they
happening,
do, you haven't got
you
anyone
don't-
to talk to,
No,
or what do I do?
exactly,
How do I
exactly.
sort that?
How do I score it? But you're side by side with the experienced people, and they're mentoring you, and you're seeing all this softball that you may not get the opportunity to see elsewhere. And you've got the State League, for instance, gave you plenty of opportunities to come and see lots of games and be part of them. And if you ever got the opportunity, go down to Blacktown, put your hand up and say, yeah, I'd love to come and do some games,
I
because
think most of the
best
scorers who do
experience.
state league are quite experienced, and I know with Cumberland I often have somebody coming and sitting beside me.
yeah.
Or scoring on the side and then say, now I did this on that play, what did you score it
Yeah.
as?
I know as a rep team scorer with North Shore, nearly every time I score, I have an assistant scorer who is a potential person who's going to come in and take another role as the head scorer themselves. And it's to make them realise it's not a scary thing. You know, don't be afraid of being a rep team scorer, or, you know, better scorer for the team that you're scoring with. Come and sit with somebody who's experienced. Come and see some, you know, really good softball, and learn while you're there.
That brings me to another point, that it's often you see a play and how many discussions have we had that this is how I scored it, and that's not how I saw it, but it's also the perspective of where you're sitting. And
that's what I emphasise, like especially in the level 2, is that softball isn't objective, it is subjective. It comes down to where you're actually physically sitting. It comes down to your experience. I find that ex-player scorers may interpret things differently to never played scorers.
That's what they say about catches, so there's in catches, because they never make mistakes.
No, catchers never make errors, and pitchers
yeah,
never make errors.
And the pitcher, never give.
It's always a catcher's fault if you're a pitcher.
But yeah, so I see State League, I was the team scorer, we had an official scorer, there was another team scorer. All three of us saw one play totally different. And we all scored it totally different.
So you're not
we then had a
necessarily
discussion
wrong.
about it, not necessarily wrong, but it was my angle of the play was the best angle because I was looking straight down at it. I was at the play sort of happened around the third base line, down that foul ball line and fence line. So I had the best angle because I was on the first base dugout, so I was looking directly at it. The opposition team scorer, she was blocked because of the dugout and everything.
And sometimes the official scorer can be blocked because
Yeah.
the umpires and the batter and the catcher all happen to get in the way at
And it was
time.
just funny because the player come off and went, oh, is that number 9? Meaning, was that number 9 home run? And it was the weirdest play that will never happen again in the history of plays. And I've gone, well, yeah. And the official went, oh, no, I only did it as a 2-base hit. And then when the other team come in after that, he's going, oh, I didn't touch the ball. Like it went nowhere near me. And so it's like, oh, well, okay, that was a home run then.
Yeah.
It was like we all had different angles, so we all had different opinions.
Yeah, and that was another advantage of coming up as an assist scorer to learn your way through that pathway here, or at tournaments where there were official scorers or more higher level scorers, is they're part of that group when we sit in this particular room here in the boardroom to do our stats and after the game, is they're part of those discussions where a situation has occurred and you've got more than the one scorer discussing, was that right or was this right, or I'm not sure that I scored this correctly, and they're learning so much from being just sitting there and listening to those discussions themselves. And so it's a very mentoring environment, especially we've got New South Wales. I think we've got the most scorers that can be available for for national championships from any state in Australia, and that's because of the environment that's created. There's no such thing as a silly question.
No.
You're not right and you're not wrong. Everybody is at the same level, even if they're a different level in scoring. Nobody looks down on anybody. They're there to just keep helping each other the whole way through.
We have a lot of good coaches as well, and when you're working with a coach, whether it be your Saturday, your team coach or your rep coach or your state coach, they all want something different, so that makes your job as a scorer challenging, but at the same time it made me want to learn how to do something else.
Yes, because they'll come up and say, I want this, and you don't know, so you then have to learn how to give them that, so that then increases
Yes, I
what you
remember
can do
after
with your scoring.
probably about 5-6 years ago, one of the coaches said, I want you to tell me who's got a quality at bat. That's what he was saying, but he didn't say that. He said, I want to know if they hit the ball twice or blah, blah, blah. And I said to myself, yeah, that's a quality at bat. So, yeah, I can do that. Yes, it's what the coaches want you to give them. It's not just averages.
No, I had a coach that wanted averages for pitching against left-hand batters, against right-handed batters. So, you have to make sure that you're recording which one's left, which one's right. I had coaches that wanted to know how this left-handed batter, what his batting average was, batting, and switch. If you had a switch batter, like switch hitter, what was their average as a right-hander, what was their average as a left-hander? I think when I scored that for that team, I had 20 different stat sheets I had to complete every week. And that's a lot of work. And then I look at my state league coach now. I don't want stats until the end of the season. And it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah, a lot of them, it's all theirs.
Exactly.
They don't need to be.
And that's the same with charting.
coaches.
Like a lot of the charting now is obsolete because your catchers are doing your pitching chart. Like they know.
Your battery's doing it.
Yeah.
I've
they
never
know
had
you
to
don't
chart since I learned how to do it.
No, me neither. None of my coaches want it.
Never. And so.
And I spent
there's
so much time
pressure on
practicing.
you.
So I think I did mine in the January at Nationals here, my level 4, where you had to do the charting. And so I went to Skims that year, and I sat behind the net like with Adam Flockhart and Cheese Pitch and that, and I sat there and charted, and I'm like, okay, I've got this, and then it's like, oh, never used it.
Never.
Like stressed out so much over it that never used
always
it.
the battery that does the charting, and
now we're not even assessing it.
No.
So it's good. It's a good
about
skill to
time.
have, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of like there's technology that can do it just as well.
Yeah,
Probably easier for you to leave you with other options.
Absolutely, I always felt that it was better for me to have my concentration everywhere else on the game than to be charting something that I was not confident in any way.
And if you're a
would
team
probably
scorer and you're
spend-
scoring on the side, you can't chart pitches anyway. You have to be behind the net to
gotta
chart
be
pitches. So.
So I'm glad it's got to the point where it's not assessed and it's not, you've got to pass your charting to get your level 4 because it just.
So we've talked about going from level 1 to level 2, which is a huge jump. To go from level 2 to level 3, how would you? That's more of a
statistical. More
It's where you kind of bring in more.
it.
Yeah, it's kind of. I think what it is, it's more of the after game
Yes.
that you're introducing now.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not the pressure of what you need to do within the game. This is what you do after the game. This is how and what you need to
Producing what's
your next steps.
required.
Yeah, your next steps. This is
And what the coach might talk about an average, at least you can tell him what the difference is between an on-base average and just a batting average, or what the pitchers want.
It's probably where you change from being the scorer to the statistician.
Yeah.
That's where the line is drawn there. Once you go into level 3, you're really starting to produce meaningful statistics. You can still do basic stats at level 2. Because
You should start to learn and practice.
well,
that.
yeah, and putting them into a basic spreadsheet.
Yes.
But the more, required statistics and understanding of those statistics comes in the level 3. And that's where you do become a statistician. And the jump from there to 4 isn't that different.
Well, I don't think I'm
It's just
speaking out of
refining.
turn, but level 4 is changing.
Yeah, well, it's still in
considerably
review.
now. Yes, but there are a lot of new statistics that are coming out
Oh,
just
good.
for
Yeah.
the level, to make it much more interesting but more
Yeah.
challenging. But I think it's also answering the differences in the coaches' repertoires that they have. They want to know more information now, and they can get it, as I said before, technology can supply it, so they want to know the meanings of it. And if we introduce that into level 4, it makes it more challenging for scorers rather than just doing it harder than
I think so too, because like obviously when I did progress from 3 to 4, the difference was, like it was focused on precision from the scoring perspective, but the difference was charting, right? So you really didn't have anything other than what you've done in your level 3, other than charting. But now we've removed that charting, so there's not
a great
like what's the difference between level 3 and level 4?
why are we doing it?
So
as Rowena says, that they're now making that a more complex sort of level, then we'll appreciate that jump. You'll take more from it, and you'll feel that you've got that achievement, that I am better now because I've done this level 4. I'm not just it's a tick on a piece of paper, and 3 and 4 aren't much different.
No.
So,
But it all comes down to if you've got a good grounding from level 2, as you say, on the diamond, you're looking at that. Then what happens after that is just
built on.
how you're working with what's happening on the diamond to what's happening afterwards.
Because
when
the
you break
basics,
it
the foundations are at level 2, and if you haven't got those foundations at level 2 down pat, or as near as, you're not going to understand a lot more of the game, and to be able to maybe progress to levels of team to score for, because they require more at those higher rep levels, or even your A grade at your local comp. Because the coaches that are coaching there are much more experienced and are requiring more from their scorers than, say, their C grade or their B grade team. So,
You might get a team player coming and say, I want to apply for a state
college
team or something, or a college,
yeah,
US college or overseas, and they'll say, can I have my averages?
they want.
I don't know how to do
I've had to do that quite a few times. The number of players that are now going overseas to the US colleges, and they all need to have their last couple of years statistics to be able to put into their resume to all their college applications. And it's whereas it was 1 or 2 every year or so, now I think I've had 4 this year, which is pretty amazing. So it's all good, all goes well for our sport, but
We're going really good, but we've just got about 5
we can
minutes
talk
left.
forever.
Yeah, got about 5 minutes left, and there's just one thing. How are we going to encourage scorers, and what possibly do they need, like if they're first starting out?
Okay.
And
And you can cut and paste.
the guys will do all that.
Yeah.
And what the difference from a club scorer to association, what would you need for that part?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we've got just about everything
Everything
covered.
else?
Yeah. Is that okay?
Okay, Leah.
Well, we talked about going from level 1 to level 2, and that's really what you need to have experience in a club. You need to be a level 1 and work on your level 2s, because that's where you might get a club coach, but not usually. So how would you encourage a scorer who was pretty good, had just been handed the book type thing, had watched lots of games, yeah, just score this game for me, how would you encourage them to come back and say, you might actually try and learn a little bit more about level 2, because you can get access to the manuals through the best place to get it is the Softball Australia
I
website.
believe the Softball New South Wales link goes straight to the Softball Australia
That's
link
what we're trying to
anyway,
get.
so
I was
yeah.
trying to get that. But yeah, I'd suggest go to the Softball Australia link to get the manuals. That way you know what you will need to learn to become a level 2.
So I think one thing that we've done, well, I've spent a lot of time doing, obviously, is developing for my association. I want to be able to take a step back and not have to score, at every state championships.
Yeah.
So we've actually, created what we've called the scorers table. So it's a spot on our website, and we're giving resources in there and links. So we've got the links to the Softball Australia website for the pathway and to access manuals and things like that. We've got resourcing links for practice games. So where I've actually sat and watched the YouTube videos of some games, practiced them and then scored them as a level 1, level 2, line-up sheets, things like that. We've got
are those resources on your
on our Southern District's website, yeah. So under our development space, we've got other resources like access to the summary score sheets, the A4 score sheets.
Yeah.
Sometimes buying a scorebook, it's $12, $14 for a scorebook. People are like, well, I don't want to go to that expense. An A4 piece of paper, really, right? So we've got the A4, the A3s, all sitting on there, available for them. We score at our association, all our juniors, about 12 players.
Yeah.
So
you've got
converted them
12, yeah.
to 12 players, extension sheets. So rather than having to score on the A3 sheet, taking the extensions off and having a separate extension sheet for them. So resources like that, change cards,
and all the coding. I used to issue little code sheets so that people would know what.
Like used to be in the front of the score.
Yeah. So
base on balls, how do you do that? And,
so things like that.
Hit by batted ball, those sort of things
so
that don't come up that often.
So we're all still developing a lot of that, but a lot of the stuff that I would give out as handbooks, I'm now rebranding and putting up on there as well, and things like that. So I think that obviously, making sure that our scorers know that those resources are there. When I went
Coming
through
from a club into an association, you just mentioned that you have 12 batters. That's more of the club perspective.
Yes, so it's a ground rule.
Yes, and the association is more of a 9, because some people, if they've only ever scored at clubs, say, everybody bats. No, it's not quite right.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
A local ground rule or a mod ball rule.
And that's the other thing I emphasise with my 2 scorers when we're mentoring as well, and taking them through the levels. And when I did the accreditations, was that know your ground rules versus knowing your official rules.
Yes.
Make sure that you're fully up to date with your ground rules. Like, I'm going to tell you that this is how the tie break works. I can tell you Southern Districts do something different. So
it's also how the game finishes, isn't it? The time,
the end of the game.
And the mercy
that
rules.
Can be association specific.
So
when I start my level 1, for instance, and even my level 2, I'll quite upfront and say, look, what I'm going to teach you now is the rules on how to score the proper game of softball as per the softball rules. But they can be all varied by your association, your local ground rules.
And that's what I've also said.
So don't take it as gospel. If I'm saying this is how it's done, we don't do that at Marshall, we don't do that at club. Yeah, and we quite often have discussions, yes, because the club does it because of this, but
the club's giving everybody the best opportunity to play and get involved.
Yeah, it's a participation reason that they've changed the rules.
So that's what I said. Like, I emphasise, make sure that you know your ground rules. This is the official rules. Know your ground rules. If you go to a gala day, if you go to any type of tournament, if you're scoring for reps, know the rules that are going to be applied to that tournament. Like,
I suggest my scorers go with the managers.
I was going to suggest that.
Sometimes
that's a good opportunity to hear.
And the other thing, like with you doing your assistant scorers and encourage them, that's also, an awesome way to get people more involved in reps and making
and
that
how to
leap
do line-up
from-
sheets and the
Yeah.
whole, that's, I found, from my perspective, that's been the best thing for getting good scorers that really want to continue their pathway, is to take them with you.
Yeah.
And don't just throw them out there. You know, once they've indicated or shown in any way some ability and the want to take that step further, okay, level 1's not enough, I'm really interested in taking it further, I'll start taking them out, or with any of my other scorers, put them with them. Every rep team at North Shore has an assistant scorer, at least one. If we can fit in two, we'll fit in two. Because I just found that was the best way, because they're comfortable, then there's no pressure on them. So
It actually takes some of the pressure off your other scorer as well, because you've got 2 sets of
you've got
eyes.
two sets of
Yes,
eyes,
yes,
because you've
yes.
got that other person watching while you're busy, making changes that have happened. They're watching the game for you, and so and that's another element of enjoyment for you as a scorer too, to have somebody with you, because quite
You've
often
been
you're
the
making those
mentor.
decisions all on your own, but you enjoy mentoring them and seeing them grow through their path, and so I do believe that that's an awesome way to help your scorers move through. And I mean, if you can offer that at the local level, go and sit with them at their club
Yeah,
games.
we
I'm scoring
encourage
for this
mentoring.
team, okay. Yeah, I'll come and sit with you for a couple of games and move yourself around.
We
If you can
encourage
do
that
that.
mentoring,
Yeah.
scoring.
And my senior scorers at
I've
on
actually
the
told,
games will,
I actually told during the level 2, start practicing your level 2, do mentoring scoring before you even look at doing your assessment. Like, come and sit with somebody.
Yeah.
We've got 3 people available in our association for them to sit with, whether it's at local club, whether they come to a rec tournament, come to state league, come to something, where we're scoring. Come and sit with us and score before you even look at doing your assessment.
Yes,
Yeah.
because you won't know if you've used the right colour, if you've used the right coding,
exactly.
unless you talk about
And you're only
somebody.
going to be good at that final assessment with a fair amount of experience
And be
leading into
confident.
it. That confidence will come with that.
Yeah.
And that's one thing COVID's done to a lot of our scorers, including us. It's taken away a lot of our confidence because we haven't been scoring regularly. And even, as you were saying, you're doing it at home to try and keep your hand in it, but there's nothing like a live game to sit there. And I think when we did the 18s or the 23s or something at the beginning of the year when we had the first lockdown, everybody was making mistakes because they just weren't, they
Takes
didn't
you a
have
game
club
or two to get
games,
into.
they didn't have, get your hand back.
All right, with all this enthusiasm to promote a scorer from level 1 to level 2, etc., where are we going to send them?
They should also look at their association, go to their association scorers coordinator. If there isn't an association scorers coordinator, check in with their association secretary. They'll be able to point them in the right direction of who can help them at an association level.
Yeah.
I think most associations have got a scoring coordinator, or they've got someone who would send them in the right direction.
Yeah, they usually organise all the scorers for the rep teams and organise the scoring courses, the level 1s and the level 2s. If they don't run them themselves, they're usually organising them through other bodies like the state body or other
So I think that's a good
associations.
idea for level 1, level 2s particularly, and you run your scoring courses through your associations. When you get up to level 3, level 4, you're probably at that stage on a wider sphere outside your association. You can look towards looking for resources on the Softball Australia. Softball
Any
New South
question
Wales
they've
side.
got, anybody that wants to look at scoring and how to do it, or any questions at all, is your first point of call is your association scoring coordinator. If you don't know how to contact them, to speak to your club and they'll tell you who that is and how to get in contact with them.
Yeah, okay. All right, well thank you very much for your time, ladies. It's been lovely chatting with you, and I hope we can do this table talk another day.